Good morning, everybody. Natalie coming to live. Spirit and coffee. Got my coffee here. So today marks the first day of no creamer. I'm getting rid of the creamer. Trying to at least detox from certain things in my life. Kind of hard, but worth it. Coffee. Got my coffee here. Okay, there we go. Awesome. If you are on here, please say good morning. Especially those on Facebook, because I sometimes don't see who's on here, but I love to say good morning to you. So I am going to be traveling and probably just do my Facebook Live old school status. May not be able to get onto Podbean. I don't think I'm going to take my laptop to do that. So just wanted to let you guys know. Okay. Maybe someone will miss me out there. Maybe not. I don't know. Who knows? We're going to continue on reading. I'm going to continue on reading Healing Through the Dark Emotions, The Wisdom of Grief, Fear, and Despair by Miriam Greenspan. Really good book. If you don't have it, get it. I'm on page 17. And so we were talking about listening, right? And the power of healing when we open up the space and listen to others, and people open up the space to listen to us, and the alchemic process that sort of starts to happen when we allow ourselves to open up the space to listen to other people and be that open canvas for them. So again, we become healers of the world by doing this, okay? We become the healers by simply allowing others to open up and just get through it, get through their mental space, get through that mental dialogue and continue to go, okay? So it says here, just as being well listened to helps people heal, listening to oneself is the secret to self-healing. Listening to ourselves, we learn who we are, what our body knows, emotional wisdom of ourselves, and slowly we honor what we hear. We begin to heal and to live fully. When we listen closely to what hurts, we learn what life is asking us. We become fluent in the language of heart, and we get counsel. We get the counsel we need. I love that. We become fluid in the language of heart. Becoming fluid in the language of heart, it's like understanding what the heart's desires are, understanding what the heart is saying, understanding where the heart is telling us to do. Beautiful, right? Okay, so listening to ourselves, but we can't get there unless we have an open space and we allow ourselves to do it and stop being so busy. Like we get so caught up in the busyness of life. Busy this, busy that. For why? Because we don't want to listen to our internal dialogue. When we're by ourselves, we're forced to listen to our own internal dialogue. Listen to yourself, right? And sometimes it's kind of funny because my father, he literally beats himself up. It's quite amazing. He's like, oh, I'm so stupid. And I'm like, whoa, what? I was like, wow, why are you being so mean to yourself? Like, you're not stupid, you're intelligent. Why would you do that? Why would you say those things about yourself? So sometimes we say things like, even me, I'll be like, oh, stupid Natalie. And then I'm like, Natalie, be nice to yourself. You see? So I have these like different voices that come in and remind me, but listening to that dialogue, because we beat ourselves up. And that's why we're beating up other people, because we're not even happy with ourselves at times. And so because of that, we're going to go out and beat up other people. And so listening to that internal dialogue, understanding what the heart's telling you, right? The heart, even what the gut is telling you, the gut and the heart, those two things will tell you, they'll give you a story. Okay, learning not to listen. We sit in a circle. I have asked a group of 6 women who have come together for a purpose of emotional healing to speak of what they learned in their families about painful emotions. The room is aglow with the lights from several candles, lending an air of ceremony to a simple act of telling their stories. Meg begins. Whenever I express a feeling, especially sadness, I was told, don't be silly. So when I felt anything, I ran off to be alone in the woods. This was my way, only comfort except for drugs. No one was there to hear me. I had to deal with the pain alone. I cried myself to sleep at night. I cried silently so no one would hear me. So again, the dark emotions have been made wrong for so long that people live in anguish and grief and despair by themselves. Sometimes they have no one to go to, and maybe just by themselves they can't handle it, right? Good morning, TKHB 89. Um, and so in that, right, in having to just deal with that by yourself, it's not an easy task. We just sometimes want, again, someone to be there for us, and we turn to other things to numb it out, to forget about it, all that kind of stuff. And that's where drugs comes in, addiction comes in, and all these other crazy things that happen or that we do. And so that's what she was saying. So she would turn to drugs. I got the same message, says Marie. I learned to direct all my bad feelings at myself, blaming myself, hating myself for my failures. I didn't cry. I pushed everything down, never let myself express anything. Nancy continues, the theme in my family, the message was, we only have happy feelings here. Anyone who is upset is ungrateful. If anyone wasn't happy, they were sent to their room to shape up. Worry and anxiety were the only feelings I allowed myself to have. I lived with a sense of foreboding. Don't get emotional or something terrible will happen. So I funneled everything into organizing, being busy, doing things, working hard to be good. I was the good girl. I can kind of relate to that in a way. So, for me, in my family, my mom was emotional. My dad, not so much. He would tell me not to cry. Like, don't cry. Stop crying or I'll give you a reason to cry. So it was like you had to hold it in. You didn't have a place to let it out. And so if I did let it out, I had to let it out by myself. And so feeling the shame of feeling that anguish and that despair, right? Good morning, Nathan. And so understanding that sometimes deep inside we feel that anguish, that pain by ourselves, and we had to do that, right? And so now you're looking as an adult and you're wondering why you're so busy. Why am I always busy? Why do I always have, something to do or something that I'm up to? Or why am I drinking? Why am I doing that? And those are the reasons why. So you're numbing out the experience of your emotional pain and despair rather than allowing yourself to go through it. And maybe you were programmed that way from childhood. So maybe your parents were telling you, yeah, you can't feel this way, or don't feel that way, or don't cry, or, we don't cry here. Everybody's just happy. And you're like, what the hell? Because I don't feel so happy. But just be happy. And if you're not, something must be wrong with you. Well, no, there's nothing wrong with you. I promise you. Okay. Good morning, Anne. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. Okay. My parents just ignored anyone who felt anything. Dorothy offers, we pretended that no one had feelings of any kind, and we did what we were supposed to do. I never let anyone know I felt anything, not even myself. I numbed myself, tuned out, avoided conflict. My mother was the only one allowed to have feelings in our family, says Rosalie. She was pretty out of control. When she was upset, she would open the doors to the rooms and yell, stupid. She'd scream and wail and carry on. We had to tippy-toe around her. We weren't allowed to disturb her. It was like living in an emotional minefield, never knowing what would provoke her. We all grew up resolved not to be emotional like her. Instead of feeling, I stole things. It was only years later that I realized how much anger there was in my compulsive stealing. So people steal. So that's another thing. We see all of so here's the deal with these emotional states of being, because we don't know what to do with the energy. We start doing crazy stuff. We see this in society. I mean, literally, if every person had a rite of passage, if we went to the old school ways of allowing ourselves to go through ceremonies, to be led by the elders, to be taught, to be shown the ancient ways, or the ways of going through the darkness and the shadow side, and having those guides to say it's okay to do that. Society itself, especially in our postmodern modern world, that literally that was taken and stripped from us, were those dark emotions and the ceremonies that we were gifted from our elders to show us our way through the darkness, kind of like the guides, right? And I think even, growing up in New Mexico, or growing up where there's a native culture, understanding that there was rites of passage and the ancient traditions. And I love it because I was taking Paradigms of Consciousness for my class, and we did talk about the indigenous practices of certain civilizations, which to me was critical that we continued those practices, but they literally, in order to create a capitalist society, have ripped those rituals from these civilizations, these people who were living. They had a system, and the system said, part of life is experiencing those emotional states of being, which are uncomfortable, but we have a formula, and we have the elders to walk you through it, and we have a community to raise a child. It's not like that anymore. It's not like that. We have so much separation in the family, in the, period, just say in the family, and then in the community, right? And so then it sort of spreads, where we're trying to find our place, right? Where's our place with our emotional states of being, with our grief and despair and our sadness? Where do we place that? And so it turns into anger for some people. It turns into, like the book said, someone stealing. It's a compulsive stealing, or people being overly busy and overly stressing their bodies. And we become so overly stimulated. We drive ourselves to sickness. I mean, that's really, that's what a capitalist society does, drives us to sickness. There's no slowing down. And for me, I'm a busybody. Slowing down for me is one of the hardest things to do, right? It's painful. It's not easy for me. People are like, well, what are you doing now? How do you have time to do all this? How do you have time? Well, number one, I don't have kids. Number two, I'm not married. So never had either one of them. And so, and because of that, I have a lot of time, right? And I spend a lot of time alone. But even in that capacity, I want to fill my time with something to do. It's like I want to do instead of just be. So imagine a family, and then this may be you or may not be you. I don't know. You guys are, welcome to share that. You may have a family where you don't have the space or the time, right, to disconnect. And so it's go, to the point of when you do have a moment to yourself, it's almost scary to look at. You're almost afraid to even think about what you're thinking about, because it might be just not very nice. But if we don't allow ourselves to do this, we end up acting out in haste. We end up acting out in anger. And that's why we have a society and civilization of people who are not very kind, and not very compassionate, because they're like, if I don't have a place to put my emotions, why should you? Good morning, Betty. So we just create the circle, right, of, oh, stop crying, quit being a wussy, quit being this, quit being that, instead of saying, hey, look, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay. Don't stay there forever, because it's not going to serve you. But how can I support you through it so that you can get to the other side on what's available on the other side of that emotional state of being? But yeah, then you end up having people again who like steal and even violence, people who want to fight, whatever, however it comes out, right? Patricia speaks last. I learned that the only way to handle feelings is to get hostile, drunk, or stoned. That was what my parents did. That is what my brothers did. And that is what I did. I was addicted to drugs for years before I began to realize that if I didn't deal with my feelings, I would be dead. And I can totally relate to that as well, because I drank, and part of my drinking was avoidance of these dark emotions, was avoidance of the pain, was avoidance of the I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. And I'll tell you a story, which is kind of funny. So I had always wanted to go to college, right? That was a big thing for me. And I was a non-traditional student, meaning that I tried to go right out of high school, but it didn't work. I quit really quick. And I went to a community college to begin with, okay? And I tried to enroll and I started my classes and then I just bailed out. But I had these dreams. And the dreams that I would have is that I didn't graduate high school. And I'd wake up and I'd be like, did I not graduate? And the whole thing was intelligence for me. It was my life was never about, I want a family, I want kids, I want this. No, I always wanted academics and I wanted to be smart, right? Intelligence to me was cool, and wisdom and just being smart. I wanted to be smart. And I felt like I wasn't. And so because of that, and because I could feel like I could never live up to my dad's standards of what intelligence was, I started to drink alcohol and party. And so for me, that was my way of dealing with how I felt I was unworthy of the world. I was unworthy to be an academic. I didn't belong in that arena. I was not worthy because I wasn't raised in in a space that says that a person like me can actually rise to the top of the education system. And it became a challenge for me because I just felt like nobody ever saw me, like they didn't. And that's, I mean, it's not true. Is that true? No, because I had teachers who did, but I think I was just looking for my parents to look at me and say, wow, she's so smart, let's invest in her. And it didn't really turn out that way. So for me, because I felt unworthy or I felt like I wasn't enough, that's what I did. I numbed myself out. I numbed myself out through alcohol, through partying, and that's not really what I wanted. I didn't want all that. I didn't even like it, but it became a habit. And so I had to learn how to undo these things. And part of my journey when I lived in India, so when I moved to India, and I was, getting all these academic things, I finally went back to college. I finally said, this is it. I'm going to do it for myself. I'm doing it for me. And I went to India and I realized that I had a problem with alcohol. I mean, I kind of knew, but I mean, it was getting bad to the point of like, I could have killed myself for sure. My body's sensitive as hell, and I said, oh no, I'm going down this road that I'm going down is not good. I'm harming myself. So we end up harming ourselves through this despair and grief by not handling it, by numbing it out, by it comes out in some way. And the way that it comes out is harmful to us at times. It hurts us. Good morning, Ian. Sorry. And we hurt ourselves. And for what? What is the reason that we're hurting ourselves? Why? And some people will say, well, I'm hurting myself so I don't hurt other people. But some people can't hold it in and they start hurting other people because they feel the pain internally and they don't know how to handle it. So I did it too, right? So we're all human and we all have our, whatever it is. Good morning, TS. And some people look at the people that are raised in a family where emotional states of being are practiced. You get this individual who literally doesn't numb out by doing drugs or by stealing or by, typically they have this understanding of how to utilize their hurt and their pain for something powerful to create. Doesn't mean that they don't go through suffering themselves, just means that they know how to handle it. They know how to utilize it without making themselves wrong for it. So, and it took me years, right? Because I always felt unworthy. That was my biggest thing. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't enough. And it took me a long time to realize that, because I would pretend like I was enough. And that was the whole thing. Good morning, Manu. Oh, no, it's me, Minu. I think I'm saying it right. Sorry if I said it wrong. Let's see. Yes, I'm saying it right. Okay, good. So I myself was self-sabotaging. I became the enemy of myself, really and literally. And so we do that. We become our own worst enemy, right? Nice to meet you too. And because of that, I led a life of suffering more than I needed to. And we do that to ourselves. Sometimes we overly suffer when we don't need to. Good morning, forgive G. So coming up with a ritual for yourself to go through these emotional states of being is critical. And if you have children, right, think about the impact that you can have on their life if you allow them to go through these emotional states of being. So it's not just, it's about you, but it's also about the children, coming up. If you're a parent and a child is crying, rather than say, don't cry, we don't cry here. Well, where do they cry then? We're human. So we all cry. We come out crying. It's part of our, right? Good morning, Rick. It's part of our experience within this 3-dimensional time space. The pain and the suffering is there no matter what. Whether you want it to be there or not, it's there. So allowing children to go through those states of being. If you have kids, right, then allow them to go through that pain and grief and despair. Give them a platform, give them the ritual. We need to come back to our rituals, right? And to our community that sort of cuddles or holds and harnesses them and rocks them and says, it's okay, go through it. Do what you need to do to go through it. And reuse that energy. After the craziness comes the creativity. Right? It's a space to allow a child to release. And I did this with my niece when she was going through some difficult times. What topic am I discussing? So this is a platform of spiritual alchemy. And so everything that I talk about has to do with the alchemic process, spiritual alchemy. Right now I'm reading a book by Miriam Greenspan called Healing Through Dark Emotions. And it is the alchemic process of going through the dark emotions. What do we need to do to come out of the other end? So what does that mean? That means, how do we turn emotions that are deeply hurtful or uncomfortable into emotions that are supportive and help us move toward our divine birthright? So I hope that helps. So my niece, she literally, so her mom is a little harsh, okay? And sometimes, we were raised by my dad. My dad said, there's no crying, there's no this. And my sister, just kind of followed suit with that. And my niece would get hard. Like, she would get a hard heart when she was sad. And I would know this, and I would say, what's going on? And she would get hard and angry and mean. And I'm like, that's not you. I know the true you. I helped raise you since you were a child. And all of a sudden something changed within you. What's going on? Before you know it, she'd crack open and start crying. So her way of protecting her emotional state of being in that crying was to act hard and to put on a shell. And it wasn't working for her. Doesn't work for her. I kept telling her, it doesn't work for you. Drop into your heart. You're safe. You can do that here. And because of that process, right, now she understands how to go through that process and what it means to be on the other end of that. When she lets it all out, she can release that energy and let it flow, give it back to the earth. And then she can start to recreate a life for herself that's harmonized. So allowing children to go through that, giving them the space to do that. Right? Think about yourself when you were a kid and perhaps you didn't. Good morning, Nana. And you didn't have that. Maybe you didn't have that person, or maybe your parents didn't let you let out your emotional states of being, and maybe you had to hold it in and think about what you had to do. And then ask yourself, am I doing that to my children? Am I doing that to the people around me? Am I just recreating that? What did it feel like for me? Is that how I wanted to be treated? Why am I doing that to other people? Because I think it's right when I know it's not right, because internally I didn't feel right when it happened to me. So I know it doesn't feel right to others. So getting really, really, really tapping into yourself and getting really honest with yourself. Good morning, Nishibal. Nishibal? Nishubal. I'm not really saying that right. So again, we're going to continue. I'm going to continue through the dark emotions. I'm going to continue reading the book. And I invite you guys to really, really, I hope people stay on here. I see people come and go, but the reality is that we are literally, we're in the dark night of the soul, and things, I don't know how things are going to happen. Good morning, Michael. How things are going to progress into the next year. But I'm going to tell you this. Get clear about this, because this really right now, we're not in a war, right? A nuclear war. We're in a war with ourselves right now. This is a spiritual warfare. It is challenging the very fabric of you and your subconscious mind right now. Everything that has unfolded in this year. And I think 2 years ago, I got on here and I kept saying, wake up, people, wake up. This is why. It's going to happen. I'm telling you. And I kept saying, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Was it prophecy? You could call it prophecy, but it was beyond prophecy. It's understanding that we ourselves have to understand how to tap into this state of being and not deny it. You deny it, you end up with a world of war, anger, frustration, and people who battle against each other. In order to love, harmonize, be with one another, love and have compassion for one another, we have to be able to get through our own bullshit. Excuse my language, but we have to get through our bullshit. The only way to do that is to allow ourselves to go through the process of the uncomfortable emotions that arise within us. Despair, grief, the things that we don't want to deal with, the unworthiness, all of those things. And if we don't do it now, it's going to be even more challenging. So I urge you, do it or don't do it, right? But I do urge you to work through it. It's hard because I'm doing great. Everybody, there's people that are not doing great. And I don't boast. I don't say, hey, I'm doing fabulous. I'm doing great. But why? Because it's a spiritual warfare, because I've prepared, because I've practiced, because I've constantly working towards liberation through my faith in God. And I'm liberated. I don't feel like I'm suffocated by what's going on in the world around me. But everybody's starting, and I'm not saying everybody, right? What up? Good morning, Quadi. But people in the world right now are feeling so suffocated by everything that's happening. they don't feel the freedom and the liberation. Why? Because they haven't dealt with all of the subconscious murk that exists within them, and they're being forced into that. And literally next year, so I said this was a 4-year. This is a year of setting foundations. So I said at the beginning of the year, set your foundations this year, because this next year is a 5-year, and a 5-year is chaos. And then you're like, well, I felt like we were in chaos last year. It wasn't. It was a time to really deconstruct the foundations that you had. Okay. I talked about the tower events of 3 years ago. I was telling people, devour those foundations that are not good and reset your foundations. Now, if you set your foundations this year, and if you haven't, you still have time. As we head into a new year, it's time to lay the laws of spiritual integrity. What does that mean for you? What are your laws of spiritual integrity? What will you not compromise? These are the boundaries that you'll say, no, this is my integrity and I'm going to stand firm on it. This is where the staff, and I talked about it the other day, Moses, the staff, everybody has a staff, right? This is where divine will comes in. And this is where your divine will comes in, and you put your staff and you say, these are my laws. Cosmically, it's going to happen, okay? At the macrocosm, it's happening, but what is happening at the microcosm, which is the one thing that you have power with, right? I don't want to say control over, but I will say power with. You have power with God, right? God gives power with you. He's with you always. And so now, right, we have this opportunity to get our staff and lay down our spiritual laws. That's what this year is going to bring. However, if you're not dealing with the subconscious mind right now and the dark emotions and the despair and the grief and everything that has showed up, and you're not setting new foundations for yourself, it's going to be a little bit harder. But it doesn't have to be. Okay? You have the power. Okay? You do. You have your staff. So take that staff. Think of this next year as a year of setting new spiritual laws, principles, and practices for yourself. As last year was setting the foundation to stand on those spiritual laws and practices. Okay, all right. So I hope that this was helpful. Got a little passionate today. But there you have it. And of course, I will be seeing you guys tomorrow, but it'll probably be short and sweet. And I won't be on Podbean because I'm not going to take my laptop, I don't think, with me, but I will be on Facebook Live. So I love you guys. Have the most beautiful Wednesday ever. New Year's is coming up for those of you in the Western world, or those of you who celebrate New Year's. Happy New Year to you. I know there's other cultures who don't necessarily celebrate New Year's when we do, so that's okay. But Happy New Year to those individuals. And for those of you who may not be celebrating New Year when we do, still an opportunity to utilize that refreshed energy that's happening on a pretty large scale, because a lot of people celebrate New Year's. So there's a lot of energy in refreshing and renew and rebirth. And so you can just ride the wave of that energy, if not. Okay. So there you have it. So I love you guys. Have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Happy New Year. Thanks, Kwadi. Have a great day. Bye-bye.